Hey everybody, welcome back to another reasonable price prediction, the series where we try to figure out where your favorite altcoins could be headed. Now today we are looking at Render token as requested in the comments below, and Render token actually holds a bit of nostalgia to me because when I first started getting into the prices of cryptocurrencies and actually being interested in purchasing some myself, I remember Render was one of the newly launching coins. It was KuCoin, funnily enough. The chart that we're looking at today, that was the exchange I chose to use. And I do remember Render being listed, funnily enough. I never bought any, but for some reason that always stuck out in my head. So some useful information for you there. Now in today's video, I'm mainly going to be focusing on where Render could go, because we're obviously at a very, very, very important level. Very important level. We're basically at our all-time high for Render, which again is a very bullish sign if cryptocurrencies are coming to their all-time highs this early in the bull run. And I have realistically called what we currently are in a bull run because the price action has been crazy, especially for Render. It's basically just gone up for the last year. So there's no point not calling that a bull run. Render has done extremely well. And then when we look at BTC, we'll see that it's outperformed BTC basically for its whole existence as well. But the main focus is going to be where we could possibly go after in the next few weeks, whether we break above and of course whether we break below. And I think it's going to be one or the other. I don't think we're going to sit around this range. It's too much of a powder keg for us to just hover at this level for a while. I think we'll either see a strong move to the upside or a strong move to the downside. And the reason I say a strong move to the downside is a few things. First of all, I think cryptocurrency has a very funny way of messing people around. And with Bitcoin at $62,000 now, whatever it is, by the time this video goes up, it's probably 65 or 64, God knows. But whatever the price of Bitcoin is right now, it's very close to its all-time high. I can see it messing a lot of people around and not going to that all-time high. You've got a lot of people betting long on Bitcoin now. You've got a lot of people expecting it to go higher and higher and to break past this all-time high now. And while historically, this wouldn't be too much out of the ordinary, it's a bit early, but it still could kind of make sense. I can also see cryptocurrency messing people around, and oftentimes we do have a pullback close to the halving, and sometimes it's before, sometimes it's after. With COVID, we had a sharp pullback, and this was unusual, but with cycles before, we've seen drops of 30%, 40%, multiple times in and around the halving. I wouldn't be surprised if Bitcoin does a similar thing this halving, where we've had such amazing price action. It's about time we got a bit of a slap in the face, maybe a bit of a wake-up call, or a bit of a shock to the system. Sorry, not a wake-up call, and Bitcoin drops a bit in value. Maybe it goes back down to like 55k, something not too drastic, but enough to sort of shake the market a little bit. And God knows that altcoins would suffer a lot if that happened. So I'm not trying to be a bear. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I also think it's something that you should consider. There is nothing that guarantees Bitcoin goes up over the next few months. Now, I hope it does, and realistically, I actually have no clue. But just be aware that that is a possibility. And if we do see something like this, we could see retracements back to $6, or maybe even the sort of $4.70 range. Now, Render has performed extremely well, so I would expect if we did have a sharp sort of pullback or sell-off in the crypto space, Render would be one of the coins that wouldn't suffer as terribly. And that's just because of its past performance. Even over this last year, it's done extremely well. So maybe where other altcoins might suffer a lot, maybe coins like Phantom, Matic, coins that haven't been getting a lot of press recently, but were big last cycle, they might drop a lot. I can't see Render falling too far. But again, it could of course drop very far. I have no way of knowing for sure how far it could drop if it does drop. The other case, of course, for Render dropping is that last time we were at this level, obviously we dropped. We got rejected and we traded down and we went and put in lows of 42 cents for Render. Now, do I think we'd trade this low? No, not at all. And that's not possible, but I just don't see that as something that is likely to happen in the slightest. But that doesn't mean a pullback a similar nature to this, perhaps, where we move to $2 could be possible. Again, leading up to the halving, a lot of altcoins do lag compared to Bitcoin. And we often see during the halving that when there are also pullbacks, there is also a lot of nothing happening, a lot of trading sideways. So a couple of factors that could potentially cause Render to trade to the downside over the next potential weeks or months leading up to or after the halving. Now, switching to the bullish case of Render breaking above this level, is that its price action over the last few years, first of all, has just been unprecedented. No real other altcoin has been rallying this long and this impressively. I mean, if we zoom out, we can see that Render's basically done a 20x since 2023. And while that doesn't sound impressive, it is extremely considering that this was a pre-halving year. A year historically where cryptos don't really do anything. And maybe they slightly trend up or slightly trend down. But usually altcoins are putting in lows, all-time lows, during this year. Like we saw with basically every top 50 altcoin. Render started trading higher and higher. And again, I think it's this AI narrative. Render has been an AI coin for a very long time. It's basically its whole MO. And it's got a few years of history to sort of provide a legitimacy to potential investors, people who are wanting to buy. Maybe they want something that's been in the space for longer, that might have better technology, or at least technology that's been worked on for longer, that's been tested for longer. Render can provide that. And this isn't even the full chart. I couldn't get a full chart, but Render launched sometime in 2020. So you have about 4 years of battle testing that Render has gotten through and survived. And with the whole AI narrative now blowing up, I can definitely see Render breaking above this level, no problem. Now, whether we break above it now, first try, I don't know. We've just come off the back of a very strong move up, but as this has been going on, our sort of slowdowns have been getting stronger and stronger, and we can see even a couple of weeks back, beginning of the year, we had quite a strong pull down. We faced resistance again here, trying to get above this $4.50 level, but literally in the last few weeks, Render has gone from $4 to just about $8, so a 2x in 3 weeks. Very impressive price action. And we've seen Render make very strong moves like this during, not amazing times. I mean, this sort of this October timeframe that Render put in its sort of major rally, this is when most altcoins were basically done. And we see with a lot of altcoins during the beginning of 2021, that's where they really put in their moves. That's where they did like the 20x's and the 30x's. And then in the latter half of the year, from like July onwards, that's why they did like a 5x on top of that. So, bringing it from like a 20x to an 80x. But it was really like the first half of the bull run year that really exploded. And Render wasn't around for that. And it still managed to do a 20x. Exactly what it's done now in a non-bull run year. Historically, compared to other altcoins, it's a non-bull run year with air quotes there. So imagine what Render could do when we start seeing rate cuts, when quantitative easing starts being introduced back into the market, when there's market stimulus and money's being printed. I mean, historically, that's what's driven the bull markets in crypto, along with sort of Bitcoin halvings, but it has also mainly aligned with particularly American money printing and low basis points. We're currently high basis points, and Render has managed to do this. What could it do in a more friendly environment? And my answer is sky's the limit. Another bullish case is that this level is very psychological, but it's also like the peak. And once we get above this, it's kind of like there's nothing in reality that's happened before that can predict where Render will go. So it's like taking the lid off. It can just go as high as it wants now. Depends on the pressure that's building up. And that pressure is building now. Now, whether the cap doesn't come off this time and we bounce down, and maybe potentially more pressure builds and we break above next try, or even the third try or the fourth try, it doesn't really matter. Once it breaks above this level, the sky really is going to be the limit for Render, and it's impossible for me to even say where it could go, especially with the whole AI narrative that's going on. Render is kind of there on the ground floor. It's one of the earliest AI coins, launching at a similar time as things like Near Protocol, that's also AI focused. So those two could see a lot of good price movements, but I honestly can't realistically say where Render could potentially go in the next cycle. I mean, it could hit 3 digits. That could be extremely over bullish, but realistically that's only a sort of a 15x away from we are now. And if Render is able to do a 20x in the weaker part of the bull run, what can it do in the stronger part of the bull run? Now, we could be experiencing the stronger part of the bull run right now. These last few months could be considered the start of the bull run, and I wouldn't blame people for thinking that, but I just think the macro environments are not what they should be. Now, anomalies happen. Maybe this is a year that we look back on as an exception to the usual rules that we need for a bull run. Who knows? But for me personally, I'm sticking to what I know. So I am kind of not calling this a bull run yet. But all in all, I have a bullish outlook on Render. One quick thing that I will notice as well is that this last half of the bull run that Render rallied through last time was about a 20-week period. We've done the same move in about 60 weeks, so about triple the time. But you will notice that Render still gets these sort of 3, 4, 5 week moves that move it the most, and then afterwards it's kind of slow movements up, but ultimately not getting anywhere. The displacement is kind of still zero. And we also get these slower moves. Now, you could argue this isn't a slower move, and you'd kind of be correct, but in terms of what we've seen here, this has been a strong move, but it's also been a slow move. It's taken a while. It's been going since August, somewhere around like 25 weeks of slow, steady movements up. But especially these last weeks, we've seen this sort of explosive price action that we've seen down here. Historically, Render doesn't usually get this for more than 4 or 5 weeks. We can see here 1, 2, 3, 4, potentially 5 weeks of strong movements. You could maybe expect another 2, but you also could say that no, about 3 or 4 weeks is expected, and that would kind of tie in with where we are currently. We've had about 4 weeks of good price movement. Maybe it's going to play out how it has done similarly, and it might have a bit of a pullback after this sort of 4 or 5 weeks of explosive movements, come back down to a local support, whether that's sort of $4, $5, whether it's sort of $6, who knows. If we take a look at how far it dropped this time, or last time, sorry, it dropped 44% from putting in a high, and if we kind of take this as a high and go down around 42%, that does put us at this resistance that I kind of pulled from, sorry, this support that I kind of pulled from previous resistances. So potentially we could see Render visit this lower level. And now that does seem like a very strong drop to $4, but you got to remember that it made this 2x in the space of 3 weeks. It's not impossible to see these moves retrace a little bit, and that's fine, that's natural. It gives you an option to buy more Render at a cheaper price. But anyway, I've waffled enough about the USD. If we take a look at Bitcoin, to be honest with you, it's a very similar story. I'm going to be ignoring this initial move up on KuCoin, because obviously there's some market manipulation, or some sorry sod paid 2.4 Bitcoins for a Render token, which is devastating. I don't think you'll ever break even with making that kind of decision. So we're going to kind of be zooming in, so excuse me if the chart zooms out when we catch this wick over here, but I'll try my best not to. Similar story with Render. We see we get these strong moves up and then these consolidation periods, but on the BTC pair it kind of does seem to be a bit more stable in terms of where it's moved from. Also, funnily enough, we are at the same level, the same all-time high that Render put in at a similar time. So we're at the same precipice as it is on Bitcoin, as it is on its US dollar chart. And with the halving, a bit of a bearish case, we often see that altcoins don't do amazing leading up to the halving. Now, Render, of course, has been an exception. It's basically outperformed all of its life, only ever really putting in higher lows. And even if sometimes the highs are lower, we're always putting in higher lows, basically. So maybe instead of a trend down, we just see a bit of a cool off, a bit of a slow down, you know, lose a bit of steam. That would kind of line up with what we expect on the US dollar chart, potentially. And with Bitcoin's price being so strong, I kind of see it hard to have any huge spectacular move to the upside while BTC is doing so amazing. Now, Render has been also been doing amazing, so it's possible. But again, I feel like there's maybe not enough pressure, but I could be totally wrong, especially when competing against Bitcoin. Funnily enough, though, this also does corroborate what we kind of thought could happen as well. While Render might not break above this level, this key resistance immediately, like this week or next week, after the halving, we do often see a lot of altcoins suddenly explode and take a lot of value from Bitcoin. And this could be the catalyst that pushes Render above this level. Now, if it does this beforehand, then again, sky's the limit. Like, there's no psychological resistance after this level. It'll turn into numbers that are like 1,500 Satoshis, 1,800 Satoshis, you know, like numbers that are just sound good in the head, or that people can make patterns from. So you'll probably see that Render will move up in levels of like similar amounts, or at least percentage moves, just because once it breaks above here, there's no actual historical resistances to play off. So it will most likely turn into something that humans can find a pattern in, because that's what happens with everything in the stock markets. People trying to find a pattern with everything, and when there's nothing to dictate them otherwise, they often do. But for me personally, what I think is we will see a pullback against Render, and then maybe just after the halving, potentially during, maybe just after, I don't know, Render will break above this level. But I would be pretty kind of certain that in the next few months, Render will be above this 14,000 Satoshi level. that was its all-time high. Maybe we see a bit of a consolidation like this happen. Again, if it wants to play out similarly, these were different times in the market. These were totally different conditions. So I don't expect a big sell-off, but you know, you could see a bit of a consolidation like this, a move down, a consolidation, and then instead of a sell-off, we could see a move up. It's definitely not impossible. And if I just quickly draw something like that, and then instead we'd have a move like this with render, and then potentially the halving being somewhere in and around the middle. I could see that happening. Maybe that's over too long of a time frame. I don't know. I really don't know. Render's like a powder keg, like I said. It's all down to speculation and what people want. But ultimately, the AI trend has been causing altcoins to blow up, like DeFi did. You know, DeFi farming did last Bullrun. So and that, you know, created crazy returns for people. So maybe it's AI's turn, and things like Render, Near, other AI coins like the Graph and stuff will have their time in the sun. Ultimately, complete speculation. But hopefully you found this video useful. Sometimes it's good to just see a chart, and even though I didn't really bring any like major points here, it's just good to talk about the macro things that surround them, and also the kind of moves that Render has done in the past and what you can expect potentially when the bull run comes along. Where it could go on its Bitcoin pair is kind of sky's the limit again. Once we break above this resistance, that's when the money will probably start to really start rolling in. But again, anyway, I'm going to wrap up the video. If you liked the video, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. Comment down below what crypto you want next, and also what's happening with Render, because I oftentimes don't look for the headlines with Render. I don't like to chase speculation. I like to just look at price and price alone, but others in the comments might want to know about it. So please, if you know anything, please comment it down below. I always love learning from you guys, and I often find you way more knowledgeable than me when it comes to these altcoins. So please do everyone a favor and share. Also consider checking out FairDesk with the link in the description. Always good to have a second exchange. So thanks very much everybody. Take care and peace.